So next we are going to talk about how to find parts of our ellipse from an equation in general form. And just like with our previous conic sections, if it's in general form, like it is here, we're going to have to switch it into standard form by completing the square. So what we need to do is first reorder our equation. So the x squared and the x term has to go next to each other, and then y squared and the y term have to go next to each other. And then we are going to move this number over to the other side of our equal sign. So I'm going to have 9x squared minus 36x plus 16y squared plus 32y equals 92. So I didn't leave any spaces yet for adding in our own numbers like we normally do. And that's because I have numbers in front of the squared term other than 1. So just like with our parabolas, if this is not a positive 1, we're going to have to factor this number out from both of our x terms. And then we'll need to factor this number out from both of the y terms, and then leave space to add in our own number. So for the x's, factoring out that 9, so this will give me x squared minus 4x plus blank. And then I need to factor the 16 out of the y terms. So plus 16, and then parentheses, y squared plus 2y plus blank equals 92 plus blank plus blank. And again, where this 2 came from is I'm taking 32 divided by 16 to get 2, and negative 36 divided by 9 is negative 4. Okay. And then because I am factoring things out, so if I were to distribute, I would be distributing to the number that we're going to add in. So I need to include those numbers in my blanks. So 9 will go with the first one, and then 16 will have to go with that second one. Okay. So these 3 terms we are going to force to factor into that perfect square trinomial. And then the next 3 we are also going to factor. And then on the right side of our equal sign, we are just combining our like terms together. Okay. So the 9 comes down. And then remember to get what's in the parentheses, we're taking our middle term and we always divide it by 2. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And then whatever number here, I square it to get this number in the blank. And then that will also go in this blank with the 9. So 2 squared is 4, and then this will be 4. And then I go to my y's and do the same thing. So that 16 just gets carried down. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then 1 squared is 1. Okay. So now I'm simplifying on the right side. So 9 times 4 is 36, and 16 times 1 is 16. And then I'm adding 92 plus 36 plus 16 to get 144. Okay. Now, if you guys go back and look at your formula sheet, I'm going to scroll back up here. Our equations for ellipses are equal to 1, and then I should have fractions with numbers underneath. Okay, so I still have to follow that same pattern for my standard form equation. So after we complete the square, our next step is to go through and divide everything by whatever is on the right side of our equal sign. So that way it's going to be equal to 1. So that means that we're going to need to simplify these fractions. So to do that, we're hoping that this number will be divisible by this one. So I'm going to start by trying to divide both of those by 9. And in this case, that works. So this will simplify to be x minus 2 squared over 16. And then we're going to do the same process for this one. So again, I'm hoping that this 144 will be divisible by 16. So 144 divided by 16 is 9. So then that means that our second group will be y plus 1 squared over 9, and then equal to 1. So this is my standard form equation. And then from that, we should be able to determine all of this information. So 16 is bigger than 9 underneath my x term. So that means that this is going to be horizontal. Okay. The center will be 2, -1. And then for the vertices, I need to know A, covertices B, and the foci, I need to know C. So I'm going to go through and find each of those. So A will be the square root of 16, so that's 4. B is the square root of 9, which is 3. And then for C, I need to use that equation, C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So this will be 16 minus 9. So 16 minus 9 is 7. And then if I take the square root of that, I can't simplify that, so we are just going to leave it as the square root of 7. So since it is horizontal, when we graph it, since I have the graph here, I'm just going to start working through that process, and then we'll answer the rest of these. So since it's horizontal, that means that my vertices have to be to the left and right of the center. So I'm going to start by graphing my center point. So 2, -1. And then I'm going to count left and right 4 to put my point. Okay, and if it helps, you can label these. So this is a vertex and this is a vertex. So if I have the graph, then I can just identify these points. So one of the vertices is going to be at -2, -1, and the other will be at 6, -1. Now, if we don't have the graph, remember we are just adding and subtracting our A value, so that 4, from the X value of our center since we're going left and right. So 2 minus 4 is -2, and 2 plus 4 is 6, and then our Y value would stay the same. And then our covertice deals with our B value. So B is 3. So from our center point, we're going to count up and down 3 and put our points. And again, because we have the graph, we can just use that to write our answers. And the order that you're putting them in doesn't matter. I tend to put the smaller point first and then the bigger one. So this one will be at 2, -4. And then 2, 2. Now again, if we don't have the graph, we are just adding and subtracting our B value from the Y of our center. So -1 minus 3 is -4. -1 plus 3 is 2. And again, we're doing it to the Y because I have to go up and down from the center. So I would still do this sketch even if you don't have this graph. And then once we have our 4 points, we're just going to connect these into an oval shape since we are dealing with an ellipse. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should somewhat resemble an oval, which mine's a little lopsided. I'm going to redo it because it bothers me. Oh man. See, guys, I am not the art teacher for a very good reason. Okay, that's a little better. So you'll get better at drawing them with more practice. Okay. Now for the focus points, we don't need to graph those. So I'm just going to write what they are. So remember, our focus points are on the same axis as our vertices. So that means that it's to the left and right of the center. So we are going to be adding and subtracting our C value to the X of the center. So one of the points will be at 2 minus the square root of 7, and then comma -1. And the second point is at 2 plus the square root of 7, comma -1. And if you want, again, on your paper, you can write this as 2 plus and minus the square root of 7, comma -1 to count for both points. But if you need to write it separately to remind yourself that there's 2, that's completely fine. Okay. And then for the domain, we are describing the X values, and range is the Y values. So remember, domain is left to right. So my left and right is between the vertices this time. So we're going from -2 to 6. And again, I can get that from this. So -2 to 6. Okay. And then range is up and down. So for this picture, it's between the covertices. So it's going from -4 to 2. And if you would rather write these as inequalities instead of the interval notation, that is completely fine.